Welcome to the 2025 update for the 12 Hours of Canton Battery Telemetry website. We are really excited about running this race for the third year, and one of the things that makes this race happen is battery management and battery telemetry. So I want to go through some important things that you guys are going to need to know as teams. Make sure we touch on the website, how it works. If you used this in the past, not a lot of things have changed, but there is one cell value that I'm going to give you that's different from last year. Otherwise, teams that have been here in years past, just use this as a refresher, or maybe go back and watch the other video before you come. Just a reminder, you do need to bring your own device on race day, and you can bring more than one if you need to, but any device that can access a website is able to use this web page. It is only available here on our network, so you can't access it from the outside world, but once you get here and you connect to our wireless network, you can access this. If you've bookmarked the page before, then certainly you can use that because it hasn't changed. But if you're new or you have a new device, make sure to go to 12hoursofcanton.com/batteries. There's a button there you can click on that gives you quick access to this. All right, so I have the page pulled up and it's to my left-hand side here, and this is the default view that you guys are going to be looking at. A couple things across the top. So the default view is either going to be 5 minutes or 30 minutes. I always recommend you go to 5 minutes because there's not really much use in going and watching and looking at old history. But if for some reason it defaults to 30, I would change that to 5. There is a refresh button you can click to refresh on demand, but more importantly, to the right-hand side of that is the auto refresh, which should default to 5 seconds, and that's going to be your recommended value. Now, the way this works is the whole system in general, the battery collects the information every 1 to 2 seconds, transmits it over to the server, and then your website updates about every 5 seconds. So just want you to keep that in mind as you're thinking about watching your race. The information you see is just a little bit lagged from what's happening on the track. That's normal. It does take a couple seconds. So when we talk about these values, as far as like the cell voltages and everything, just keep that in mind that what you're looking at is just a little bit behind of what real time is. All right, when you scroll down, you're going to be looking at 3 main key aspects of the battery that are the most important. And that is the SOC, which is state of charge, the cell voltage minimum, and the cell temperatures. Out of the gate, I'll tell you that the cell temperatures, hopefully this year, are not going to be a factor because we finally have some new batteries. And if you ran the race before, you saw that we frequently got into the 70, 75 degrees Celsius, which was really hot for these batteries. This year, not anticipating that being an issue. In fact, in testing and racing environments and the endurance races we've been running, we see the batteries float between 40 and 45, maybe 50 degrees Celsius. We may push that limit a little bit during the 12 hours, but we're not anticipating seeing 70-degree temperatures like we did before. And that is great news for everybody. Jumping over here to the left-hand side, the state of charge. Right now, this battery is showing 88%. You do not want to use this value as the determining factor on your pit stops. The reason for that is that it's an approximation. So the battery is going to try to tell you roughly where it is in its charge cycle, but it's not exact. In fact, if you watch the first 5%, you'll probably notice that the battery discharges the first 5% pretty rapidly. And then especially when you get to the other end of the spectrum, when you're looking at like below 10%, you may not even see values 5, 6, 2, 3%, because when it hits 10%, it may actually drop right to 0 immediately. So I always warn teams, state of charge is not the thing you're looking at. You're actually going to be looking over here to the right, which is the minimum cell value. So state of charge, it's a good general ballpark of where you are, but it's not going to tell you exactly what you need to know before you reach battery cutoff. So with the minimum cell threshold, this box is always going to tell you whatever the weakest cell in the pack is. So you have 2 sets of packs. You have 8 cells on the right-hand side of the car and 8 cells on the left-hand side of the car. There's always going to be one cell that is lower than all the other ones. This box is going to highlight that for you. And then when that particular cell or that lowest cell in the pack reaches 2.5 volts for 2 seconds, the battery will shut off. So that's new this year. If you had telemetry last year, you were probably at 2.2, or maybe some of them were 2 volts. The reason for that was because of a misread or a problem. This value is different this year. You are looking at 2.5 volts for 2 seconds. Now remember, a battery could temporarily reach 2.5 volts right as you let off the throttle, and it could jump back up. So it really does need to see that value hit 2.5 and stay there for a very short period of time before the battery actually shut off. In reality, you don't want to be flirting with 2.5 volts, 2.6, even 2.7 volts on your minimum cells. When you get that low, you really need to be pitting the car. Because what's going to happen is if the battery does shut off, the car is also going to turn off. You're going to have to wait a couple seconds for it to turn back on, and then you're going to be in speed 2, which is basically limp mode or pit lane speed, all the way back to the pits. And the worst place that'll happen is right around the start-finish line, because you're going to have a whole lap to go around the car at speed 2. When you start to get below 3 volts, you really need to start thinking about pitting the car. You're probably going to sit in the 3.5 to 3 volts for a good portion of your stint. You start getting below that, that's when you know. Keep in mind that not every team is going to achieve the same amount of energy draw from the battery. So drivers who are harder on the accelerator or who brake a lot are not going to be able to get the same results. So while driver A may get 80 or 90 laps out of a charge, driver B may get 15, 20 laps lower than that. It actually can vary quite a bit. In fact, we've seen in testing, endurance races and so forth, that the way the driver handles the car does make a significant amount of impact to how much energy you're able to draw out of the battery. It's the same thing as fuel mileage. You guys know that if you drive a car smoothly, you can generally get a better fuel mileage. Same thing with batteries. So we'll scroll down here just a little bit. This chart is telling you all 16 cells across the battery in a graphical representation. Last year, you probably, well, in most cases, cell 8 was always our problem child. We shouldn't necessarily see that this year. You'll probably see cells 9 through 16 probably be your lowest ones on average. Part of that is the nature of reading the voltages between the two packs. However, these batteries are very good about balancing themselves, and for the most part, you should see really consistent values across the pack. If you scroll down a little bit further, you're just going to see the actual data represented down to 3 decimal places, and you're going to see these historical graphs. Every time you let off the throttle, the voltage is going to go up a little bit. Every time you get back on the throttle, voltage is going to drop a little bit. So that's why you're going to see these voltage fluctuations and graphs. The graphs are going to give you that visual representation of where your battery is trending and how fast you're getting to that drop-off point at the end. In general, in ideal conditions, 100 laps is a reasonable target for a full battery charge, but you can gauge off of that in race conditions, given your driver environment, and kind of proportion that to your strategy for your teams. Now that is a little bit longer than in years past. These are slightly higher capacity batteries, and they are slightly better balanced. So keep that in mind for those teams who have run this race in the past. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with us or leave some comments on the video. We look forward to a great race. Thanks for participating, guys.